This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, everybody. It's 1 o'clock on Thursday. My name is Dr. Doug Smith, and since it's 1 o'clock, it is time for our Monday through Thursday 1 o'clock podcast. This is a podcast where you will hear the truth about the opioids, the real science, what actually happened, what went wrong. We've been talking about the fact that, really this week, we've been laying out what actually went wrong. How in the world did this happen? And what we saw was that the father of modern science, Dr. Karl Popper, he tried to prevent this. Oh my gosh, 100 years ago, when he said, hey, here's the definition of what is science, and here's a definition of what is not science, and here's a yardstick by which you can tell science from non-science. And Dr. Popper went through a number of things and said, hey, pretty cool stuff, but this is not science. Horoscopes, pretty cool, but hey, that's not science. Astrology, hey, pretty cool, but wow, that's not science. Mesmerism, hey, pretty cool, but wow, that's not science. Psychiatry, hey, pretty cool, but it's not science. It's not science because it doesn't meet his definition of science. And the definition of science was things that can be proven false. Okay, things that can be proven false. It takes a long time to think about that and understand what he means, but that's his definition of what is and what is not science. That's what we referred to as the line of demarcation between science and pseudoscience. And psychiatry is not science. Psychiatry is pseudoscience. And psychiatry got used by the FDA as if it was science, and the opioids got approved, and a bunch of money got made. Imagine that. And a bunch of people got hurt. So what we've been talking about was psychiatry is not science because it is based on observations. And observations can't be proven true or false. Okay, hey, I saw an airplane. Well, how do I prove that's true or false? It's an observation. Okay, hey, I saw an airplane, therefore this is an airport. Well, how can I prove that whether you did or didn't see an airport? Okay, and that's actually not a bad example. Hey, I saw an airplane, therefore this is an airport, is about as it's about the same thing as saying, hey, I saw you buying fentanyl, therefore you're an opioid addict. Okay, and that's why it's not science. Okay, so what I wanted to do today was go over the 11 observations that are used by the psychiatrist. Okay, this is a book called DSM-5. Diagnostic Statistic Manual, Volume 5. This is the book of psychiatry. Okay, this is how the psychiatrists define things. This is their Bible. This is the basis of psychiatry. And on one page are the 11 observations that constitute the diagnosis of opioid addiction or opioid use disorder. And I wanted to go through those 11 today. All right, so here we go. Okay, and I'm reading straight out of DSM-5, and it's right there on the screen, in front of you, and it's right there in the second citizens petition. That's what we're doing. We're going through the second citizens petition page by page. I want our people to be well educated. Okay, and here we go. We're going to read all 11. Number 1. Opioids are often taken in larger amounts or over a longer period of time than intended. Well, duh. Once your tolerance went up, you had to take more to not be sick. And you had to take them over a longer period of time to not be sick. So number 1, opioids are taken in larger amounts or over a longer period of time than intended. Well, that's because of the genetic damage. Number 2, there is a persistent desire or unsuccessful efforts to cut down or control opioid use. You didn't ask for this. You didn't want to have to keep using the opioids. You didn't have to want to use more and more. You did not ask for this. Nobody warned you. Nobody said, hey, you take the opioids, you're going to get genetic damage. And when you try to stop taking them, you get sicker than you've ever been. And in order to avoid the sickness, you're going to have to go out and keep buying opioids. Nobody told you that. You wouldn't have done it. Okay, so the second one, there's a persistent desire or unsuccessful efforts to cut down or control opioid use. Of course there was. You didn't ask for this. You didn't want it. All right, number 3. A great deal of time is spent in activities necessary to obtain the opioid, use the opioid, or recover from its effects. Well, duh. You didn't want to be sick. If you want to be sick, you had to go out and find something. Okay, you weren't trying to get high. You just didn't want to be sick. Number 4, craving or a strong desire to use opioids. Yeah, okay. Yes. Okay. Boy, these psychiatrists just drive me crazy. You weren't craving to get high. You didn't want to get sick. And when you did get sick, yes, you craved opioids because that was the only way to get out of the sickness. Okay, but they totally missed it. They totally missed it. They misinterpreted everything you did. It's amazing how they misinterpreted everything you did in such a manner that made them money and prestige. Isn't that amazing? Recurrent opioid use resulting in failure to fulfill major role obligations at work, school, or home. Once the sickness starts, you can't get anything done. It's all about just not being sick. Where are we up to here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 6. Continued opioid use despite having persistent or recurrent social or interpersonal problems caused or exacerbated by the effects of the opioids. Again, you had no choice but to continue the opioids. It was the only way to not be sick. All right, number 7. Important social, occupational, or recreational activities are given up or reduced because of opioid use. I don't really understand the difference between number 6 and number 7. Number 6 says, continued opioid use despite persistent or recurrent social or interpersonal problems caused by or exacerbated by the effects of opioids. And then number 7 is important social or occupational or recreational activities are given up or reduced because of opioid use. Those two sound like the same to me. Okay, all right. Number 8, recurrent opioid use in situations where it is physically hazardous. I'm not sure what they mean by that one. Recurrent opioid use in situations in which it is physically hazardous. Is that sharing needles? Recurrent opioid use in situations where it's physically hazardous. Anyway, again, the reason you were using the opioids was to not be sick once you were genetically damaged. What are we up to? Number 9. Continued use despite knowledge of having a persistent or recurrent physical or psychological problem that is likely to have been caused or exacerbated by the opioids. No. Continued use despite knowledge of a persistent or recurrent physical or psychological problem. No. The continued use was so that you wouldn't get sick. The sickness was overwhelming. It couldn't be tolerated. It couldn't be endured. You had no choice. Number 10. Tolerance as defined by either of the following. A need for markedly increased amounts of opioids to achieve intoxication or the desired effect. Okay, having to use more was a sign of the genetic damage, not a sign of addiction. And B, markedly diminished effect with continued use of the same amount of an opioid. Again, that's from the genetic damage. The genetic damage produced an abnormal opioid receptor, and it took more opioid to get the same effect. And for that, and because they didn't understand or acknowledge the genetic defect, they label you as an opioid addict. So really, their inability to understand what was going on led to their diagnosing you as an opioid addict, but they sure made a lot of power and money off of it. All right, number 11, last one. Withdrawal as manifested by either of the following. The characteristic opioid withdrawal syndrome, or the same or closely related substance are taken to relieve or avoid withdrawal symptoms. They just really don't understand it. Okay. By the way, they use the number of observations to determine how severe your opioid addiction is. If you have 2 or 3 of the 11, well, that's mild. If you have 4 to 5, well, that's moderate. If you have 6 or more, well, that's severe. Boy, wow. I can't even begin to tell you how bad the psychiatrists missed it. They're not even in the same. They're not even in the same game. They're not in the same ball field. They totally missed it, but they missed it in a way that gave them power, money, and prestige. And you can't ignore that. All right, I'm long today. My apologies. This ends us for the week. Everybody have a great weekend, and we will see you back here on Monday, Monday through Thursday at 1 o'clock. My name is Dr. Doug Smith. Please like and subscribe us. Place this podcast on your social media and everybody else's social media, and let's get the word out there. Have a great weekend.